It's being called one of the darkest days ever for the Toronto police. This headline in the Toronto Sun: Toronto cops busted in horrendous organized crime probe, sources say. At least 9 Toronto police officers are under arrest. They are suspected of being involved in drug trafficking, extortion, auto theft, gambling, and conspiracy to commit murder. Here is Chief Jim McLean.
Well, this is a deeply disappointing and sad day for policing. This investigation also underscores the insidious, corrosive nature of organized crime. It highlights how these criminals find a way to infiltrate even the most well-protected institutions across our society.
According to McLean, officers are accused of leaking addresses to hitmen and plotting to murder a staff member at the Toronto South Detention Centre. Let's listen.
Investigators allege that Toronto police officers had unlawfully accessed personal information. This information was then funneled to other criminals who carried out shootings and other violent offences. The investigation also uncovered evidence of other illicit activity, which will be outlined by Deputy Chief Hogan.
Our guest is security expert and bodyguard to the billionaires, Ross McLean. Ross, I know you've been keeping a close eye on this story. What's the latest?
Yeah, I have been keeping a close eye on this story, and to some degree it becomes personal. I'm a former Toronto police officer, Marc. So as we're looking at this, the story is like something out of a movie, in that we've got all of these inside Toronto police officers, one retired, brothers or a father and son team, who have been involved in taking information and maybe more and giving it to organized crime that has resulted in the shootings at residences, extortions, and attempted murder on, it's either the officer with Toronto that's involved with the detention center or an officer from the detention center. It wasn't clear from the way they presented it where they were going to do a murder based on as a result of this information. So let me tell you, it's taken the force by storm, and it's got me worried because of the breadth of the corruption that seems to be exposed here. I think we're just sort of starting to peel off the Band-Aid, really, Marc.
High-ranking heads should roll, I think. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to tell you where my biggest concern on this is it has always been, and anybody who's been in a large city, or certainly with Toronto for 25 years, the complaint has always been police investigating police, right? That's always been the complaint. Now, in this case, it's looking like the York regional cops who did this investigation. Looks like a stellar job. Very proud of them. There was no leaks. They managed to get these arrests. But the concern came in when they knew there was going to be an attempted murder. They immediately notified the chief of Toronto Police, whose force is involved in all of this. They did not bring in the Special Investigations Unit. Now, the Special Investigations Unit, if somebody is going to become shot at or injured or something because of a police officer's conduct, you call them in. You call them in. But they weren't brought in here, despite the fact we have reports of shootings, extortions, and attempted murder. So that's a concern. And the chief of Toronto Police has come out and said, oh, I am voluntarily calling in the chief Ontario police inspector for the province to look at our whole setup, how we vet security in the police and how we do our investigations and everything. And my concern there is, Marc, how much was he on the outside looking in? And how much was this demanded of him that you better have someone come and look at your force the way it's set up? Because we found a lot of corruption going on. That's my fear. That's where I think it's going to go further, Marc.
Yeah, I mean, these are extremely serious allegations, charges. You're talking about drug trafficking, extortion. This was organized crime at a very high level amongst the Toronto Police Service, and there was a lot of people involved. And so apparently there was also talk that information was leaked to hitmen, assassins, basically, who used that information to make targeted hits on individuals. Is that right?
Yeah, this was out in the west end of Toronto. So what I'm going to say here is a little bit of guesstimation. So this is not necessarily facts that came out. But it looks like the police divisions were from the West End. My understanding is one of the officers who was implicated here had some experience or was with the Guns and Gangs unit. And I do know from past homicides that have gone on out in that area, involves gambling supposedly and other issues and probably debt collection, that the mob would hire gangsters from back, you called them the Bloods and the Crips, but they would hire gangsters to go do the hits. And it's sounding like that may have been a bit of what went on here based on what I'm hearing about the arrests when the police caught those guys going to a house and shooting it up. There was talk of some other arrests that are going to come. They arrested 3 there and 3 others. And I'm just sort of guessing that they were, all the hitting was being outsourced everywhere. And we're also seeing a mixture. I want to say this without, take this the right way, but you're seeing, it looks like different cultural organizational crime here going on between perhaps the mob, perhaps some of the Indian organized crime that we've seen here, and then the street gangs, all operating together with the help of a number of police officers. And I think there's more coming from other forces, Mark. I think there's more coming.
Oh, really? And there was a plot to murder a staff member at the Toronto South Detention Center as well, right? Somebody worked there?
Yeah, and we're not getting the full grift of that. Like, who, like, what one would imagine, you want to look for the motive for that. Who was in the prison that didn't like this guy or didn't get treated well or thought it was payback time because this guy maybe was not cooperating or doing something that they wanted done from the inside? I mean, the amount of drugs that get moved in and out of prisons and assaults, I mean, it's not a nice place, right? So what is the further story on that? We just got the basic details. And can I tell you one other strange thing, Mark?
Of course.
At that presser, you had the Toronto Police Chief, the York Regional Police Chief, the Deputy Police Chief from York Region there explaining this. And they're all wearing body armor, soft body armor, at the presser. They're in their white shirts with their soft body armor on. You don't normally see the white shirts putting on their soft body armor unless they're going out on the road somewhere or doing something. So what's that about? Was there a threat? Were they being careful? I mean, if they already tried to murder a cop and they had inside information, how much further is this going? That's speculation on my part, but that's the sort of eyes that I have when I move into the close protection world. You want to see where something is going. So I have the police background and the close protection background there.
How high should the blame go? And I mean, should somebody be resigning today as a result of all this?
Well, some reporter asked the chief that at the presser today, and he said, well, I'm staying on. He didn't say anybody asked him to resign or not. But I'm telling you, the question, without the SIU being called in, once they knew that someone's life was in danger and shots were being fired, that's the mandate of the SIU. And if there's anything even close to a whiff of should we call the SIU, they're supposed to call them. Now, they work confidentially. There's some top ex-police there. You could have them in on this whole investigation and make sure you're getting everybody. Because let me put it this way. It's been my experience that where you have corrupt cops and you've got international drug dealing, which we're seeing here. This guy was reportedly bringing in cocaine in exchange for pot going down from Toronto. Toronto's a mass exporter of pot. That's one place we work well in our trademark. And bringing the cocaine in. But a lot of times when you see that, you see other people are also corrupted. Prosecutors, judges, border people. But we didn't hear about any arrests in any of those areas. So that's what I'm wondering. How far does this go, or how far did they take it?
Yeah, absolutely. How high up the ladder? Maybe one of these guys that was arrested can be co-opted into spilling the beans on higher ups who may have been taking kickbacks or bribes as well. What do you think?
Well, that's where we need more information on exactly what did these officers do. Did they just give information? Did they know specifically what the information was for? Did they partake? There's talk, I think, of one officer. It's hard to put it together the way the chiefs just say it. then they don't allow a lot of questions, one question, maybe one follow-up. But it sounds like there was one gun that was an automatic weapon that was brought in, that was used in a lot of the shootings, and there's talk of one officer being charged with getting a hold of property from, it sounds like, an evidence room with passports, IDs, and weapons, perhaps? Were weapons perhaps being trafficked in this one? Once again, I'm speculating, but these are the questions that need to be asked. I mean, when you're a cop and you're out there risking your life, and I've known some of the top undercover cops in the business, they are risking their life. And, you know, the really, really good ones, man, it's a talent. Same as McDavid scoring goals. I couldn't do what they do. I could not act the way that they act and do what they do. But if their life, if someone's life like that was compromised because a brother in blue let out their information, I mean, that's, I don't have words for it. And I can tell you the police boards are buzzing about this with the cops in the field, that this happened. There's real problems about that.
Yeah, I mean, it must have demoralized people who are on the force, honest police officers who just want to do their job. And to your point, their lives may very well have been put at risk by their brother officers leaking information saying, hey, watch out for this guy. You know, he's going to be investigating this case or that case. And yeah, that's extremely disturbing. And there has to be a massive investigation here. I mean, does the province get involved in something this huge?
So the chief has voluntarily called for this new Ontario Police Directorate. I'm not sure the exact title. He's in charge of all the policing to come in, and he's asked him to do a big investigation into 5 big areas of their policing. It's interesting that he had time to identify 5 big areas: the hiring, the ongoing vetting of officers, and they didn't really speak to what the other areas are. But if they're having to come in to look at that wide of a swatch of the way the Toronto Police Force operates, it wasn't very targeted. Oh, we wanted to find out how they use this system. No, it sounds like it's a pretty wide net that they want to put on this. And I got a feeling that that was probably quietly demanded of the chief, that he be the one that writes the letter for it. That would be, once again, my guess on that.
I'm wondering if there's any issues around, I mean, if you're talking about hiring, whether wokeism is an issue, this obsession with ethnicity, perhaps even racism, anti-white racism in favor of certain groups, not others. I mean, is this inevitably a product of that type of attitude as far as hiring goes? Diversity hiring, I'm talking about.
I'm going to tell you, it absolutely is. It's not a popular thing to say. I've heard for years that the standards have been lowered for hiring in the Toronto Police. I've heard everything from reading and writing skills to language skills to concerns with the way people have to behave based on their own cultural beliefs, that has gotten in the way. So it's part of it. And look, I know people who are recruiting. I know other police departments who are recruiting. They are working hard to find good people. I mean, man, they should probably put a bounty out of $1,000 to get good people to come. They're working hard to find them, and they are hiring good people. But my understanding is, especially with the Toronto force, they were going to have a ton of cops leave this year because they're going to retire. It was going to leave a huge gap. And the chief actually went to them all and said, hey, I'm going to throw extra money at you for your benefits and this and that and the other if you stay on till 2028, apparently. And then someone in the crowd, when he was addressing the force, I'm told, said to him, yeah, but then what's going to happen in 2028? You're going to have a ton of people leaving in 2028. So it sure is a challenge to have the resources. But, I just want to say again, these guys who work in surveillance and who did this, they did a great job because no leaks came out from the York region, as far as we know, to contain the damage. That's where the SIU would have helped. But I had one time, Mark, I was in uniform. I run into this whole pile of bikers, and they were walking into my police station. I was ticked at what are these bikers doing in my police station. I went right to the staff inspector. I said, what are these guys doing in our station? They shouldn't be in here. And he looked at me and he said, they're ours, Ross. And I could not tell. Yeah, I can usually pick out a cop when they're in old clothes or this, that, and the other. But some of these old clothes guys, they're very, very good. And they risk their lives, make no doubt about it.
No doubt. Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, though, how long did this corruption go on? I mean, was this going on for years? Any word on that?
Well, Mark, let's do a bit of a crossover here. I've talked with you, you've interviewed me before, and I've talked to you about what seems to be the lack of investigations into people in authority who are committing potentially crimes. And I'll go back to the CSIS officers who came out and leaked the information and the search warrants and the money and the receipts about foreign interference with Chinese interfering with our government and our elections, right? They felt so bad that the corruption was so bad that they felt they had to become whistleblowers and go undercover to get the information out. So I think this country is due for a whole new level of finding some sort of task force to do investigations into people in power that can be credible. I mean, look at the Epstein stuff that's coming out now. Can anybody even believe the amount of reach that guy had and the amount of influence he had? So that's where the concern comes in here with this bust in Toronto. Largest police force, capable police force, but they communicate on intelligence levels with all kinds of other police forces. What kind of information was being leaked?
Yeah, I mean,
that's the question.
They've got a public problem, don't they? I mean, how do you restore trust in the police department after this?
The police board's going to have to figure something out. I said, Mark, like legislation has to be brought in to deal with this because every layer of government feels they're above the law these days, and no one looks into them, and they go and investigate themselves. So that's what I'm saying is at the root of this one. This is the police investigating the police. When they call in this appointed provincial board member guy to do the work, well, he's another police associated guy who's coming in to overlook the police. You'd like to think that there's some independence and we'd be putting away some really, really bad guys and we'll prevent really, really bad guys from doing dangerous things. You know, I used to say I didn't come across many bad cops in my day. If 1%, 1.5%, I would say hi. But I used to say to people, all it takes is meeting one bad cop to ruin your life.
Yeah. And
so the consequences can be pretty bad. And it's a high bar that the police have to hold. And my heart and my prayers go out to them all the time. But this really needs to have some independent eyes taking a strong look at this one.
Absolutely. How do people consume your content online on X and elsewhere?
They can find me on X at McLean Chronicles and on YouTube at McLean Chronicles. And I'll be covering more information about things like this. And I say, I'm fortunate, Mark. I've been to a lot of places. My eyes have seen a lot of things. And so I like to be able to share what I know from what's behind the curtain to help educate the public so the public can also be better protected.
Fantastic. Ross McLean, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
And if you enjoyed this show, consider supporting independent journalism by going to junonews.com/straight up. We'd really appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in, my friends. We'll see you next time.